before we begin, the text you see will have different colours for our own responses. So the colour red will be language analysis, blue will be summary or what things mean and trying to understand basically what Frost was trying to say. Green is context and allusions to other texts, and purple is personal response.
First, we'll talk about the title, The Black Cottage. The black already creates a sense of mystery, and the dark connotations of the black juxtapose the cottage, which brings life and warmth. About the themes and messages. Most of the poems deal with politics on one level and human insecurities on a deeper level. Here, The Black Cottage is no exception. On the surface, it's about a historical lesson about the woman and the Civil War, but on a deeper level, it deals with the human fear of change. General ideologies and truths and patterns of life and the cycle that these truths go through. It's either a cycle or an underlying truth that they're all based and seek to achieve. We do not know any details about the woman. She defines herself by the cottage, which is a metaphor for truth. Her lifestyle was to live by the truth, which was all men are created equal. On to the first line. We chanced in passing by that afternoon to catch it in a sort of special picture among tar-banded ancient trees set well back from the road in rank lodged grass. We already see that the poem starts in a Frost-like fashion set in the woods. It is set in 1915 when a pastor and his companion walk through the woods when they come across a cottage. We see in the line set well back from the road in rank lodged grass. The cottage represents truth and the house is isolated, just like the woman and her views are, as we see later in the poem. The little cottage we were speaking of, a front with just a door between two windows, fresh painted by the shower, of velvet black. We paused, the minister and I, to look. He made as if to hold it at arm's length, or put the leaves aside that framed it in. Pretty, he said. Come in. No one will care. The pastor says pretty and guides the man through the story of the house. The simplicity of the cottage may represent the present generation's view of the past. They miss the cottage death from far away. Little and no one will care is diminutive towards the cottage and her ideas. The path was a vague parting in the grass that led to a withered window sill. We pressed our faces to the pane, you see, he said. Everything's as she left it when she died. Her sons won't sell the house or the things in it. They say they mean to come and summer here, where they were boys. The small house, it so happens, is the property of a family long gone. The father had died in the Civil War, leaving a bereaved widow to raise her sons alone. The widow has since died, and the sons are long removed. Though the sons are always intend to return, they are never arriving. The boys know that they are not going to come back, yet they will not let go. They find a sense of security in the woman's presence, despite her not being there. They live so far away. One is out west. It will be hard for them to keep their word. Anyway, they won't have the place disturbed. A buttoned haircloth lounge spread scrolling arms under a crayon portrait on the wall, done sadly from an old daguerreotype. That was the father as he went to war. She always, when she talked about war, sooner or later came and leaned, half knelt. The house has remained unchanged, with all the decorations and history still intact. That pastor relays the husband's life and story of death. The portrait on the wall is of the father, who died in battle. She used to come and kneel beside it. The minister argues that as the portrait is so unlifelike, that it would not have drawn much sympathy or emotion. However, she always returned to the painting, so it must have some moral emotion or impact for her. Against the lounge beside it, though I doubt, it's such unlifelike lines kept out to stir anything in her after all the years. He fell at Gettysburg or Fredericksburg.
Continuing on from he fell at Gettysburg or Fredericksburg, I ought to know it makes a different which. Both Gettysburg and Fredericksburg were battles during the American Civil War, and it is apparent that her husband had died fighting on the north side, the side that fought for the freedom of slaves and the unity between states. The poem then moves on to say, but what I'm getting to is how forsaken a little cottage this has always seemed, kind of giving the impression that this cottage has felt lonely and abandoned even before the inhabitants had left it, furthering the idea of how truths and ideas have been neglected over time. They could leave home and go live their lives successfully, perhaps. However, her two children moving out meant that she was left alone by herself, with no husband or no one to help her or no one to look after her, especially as she was getting older. Next, we'll move on to the line, I mean by the world's having passed it by. This shows that the cottage is isolated, obscured, and hidden away from most of the world, just like the real truth is. You will most likely not find this cottage unless you are looking for it specifically, kind of like how you can't know the extent of this real and honest truth unless you fully, deeply believe in it. A few lines under that it says, it always seems to me a sort of mark to measure how far 50 years have brought us. So I think this is the minister talking of how the cottage is a way to show them how far they have changed or how much they have changed in the last 50 years. Perhaps our views have changed so much in these 50 years that this woman's outlook on the world seems almost alien like. It's different and it's strange to us. The poem then moves on to say, the warping boards pull out their own nails, with none to tread and put them in their place. This personification is really good description of perhaps self-destructive behavior. It's a really powerful and emotive way of portraying the house's abandonment and neglect. Further on in the poem it says, she had seen Garrison and Whittier and had her story of them. So, as a bit of background, William Lloyd Garrison was a prominent American abolitionist, journalist, suffragist, and social reformer. John Greenleaf Whittier was an American Quaker poet. Both were advocates of abolition of slavery in the United States. The next part of the poem says, one wasn't long in learning that she thought whatever else the Civil War was for, it wasn't just to keep the states together, nor just to free the slaves, though it did both. So this lady believed that the war was more than what was on the surface. So obviously people were fighting for the abolition of slavery and for unity between the states. But this woman, while she also believed in those, she believed in a deeper truth that brings us down to the bottom here that says, her giving somehow touched the principle that all men are free and equal. This was the truth that she believed in. Underneath this it says, and to hear her quaint phrases so removed from the world's view today of all those things. So Frost uses the word quaint, which by dictionary definition is attractively unusual or old-fashioned. So my take on this is that people thought that this woman's beliefs were so different and so far off from their own that they were almost intrigued and interested in what she was trying to say, but not enough for them to believe it themselves. It then says, that's a hard mystery of Jefferson's. So this Jefferson person obviously is Thomas Jefferson, who was the third president of the United States. He was famous for promoting individual liberty, and he was also the primary author of the Declaration of Independence. He also famously said, all men are created equal, kind of relating back to the phrase, all men are created free and equal, which was the main principle that the woman based her truth around.
So, this belief of Jefferson's and modern America continues throughout the poem. So, the fellow referred to here is George Santayana. He was a well-educated philosopher and was very critical of Puritanism and of the values which America was built. So the Puritans, they tried to become more pure through worship and doctrine and lived a simple and modest life, much like the woman in this poem who lives in the cottage. So, although Setiana was well educated, he actually couldn't understand Jefferson's statement that all men are created equal. So here, Frost says that by not believing, he is taking the easy way out, which is a quote in the first line. So the relevance to the poem here is that it's stressed that the lady in the house did believe this theory. So she was highly uneducated, she was innocent in her beliefs, and she could wrap her head around this theory. So Frost explains that the lady's values and beliefs are fundamental, simple, and uninfluenced by a modern society. And of course, as the poem was written in 1914, the context will be a little different as modern. But where he says that each age will have to reconsider it, you couldn't tell her what the West was saying. That just emphasizes how uninfluenced she was by other ideals. So Frost again emphasizes her lack of education and worldly view through her lack of exposure to racial awareness. This, paired with the diction serene, portrays her isolated nature. As we continue down, we also can note that the working hand may be God, who made the people. So this again brings in the theme of truth and the purity of ideas. So carrying on with this idea, Frost here, through the use of the pastor, suggests that the youth and the non-religious are basically the same, as they are equally innocent and unaware of the truths. So the pastor says he would change his exploration, the creed, of the truths to prevent the innocent from being corrupted of the contemporary world's truth that distract from the one holy truth, which is Jefferson's all men are created equal. So, therefore, we note that the woman is uneducated and innocent from all other truths, apart from Jefferson's. She is morally pure, and Frost respects her for that. So, to sum up the page so far, basically this section just elaborates on Jefferson's ideal that all men are created equal and explores that the woman understands and believes in it. And this is because she is uncorrupted by modern truths and remains innocent, thus remaining true to her values. And that's because she's unaware of all of the other truths in the world. Here we have a section of language at the bottom of page 3 that leads into page 4. We've just made a summary, so if you wanted to read the summary of this section, feel free to pause the video and read as you like.
With heartache, how should I feel? I'm just as glad she made me keep hands off. For dear me, why abandon a belief merely because it ceases to be true? And falls asleep with heartache, how should I feel? The rhetorical question here, how should I feel, continues the conversational style of the entire poem. They don't seem to be searching for anything, rather having a conversation, not necessarily seeking answers, just continuing a conversation, not using the moment as a means to an end. I'm just as glad she made me keep hands off. For, dear me, why abandon a belief merely because it ceases to be true? Going back to the metaphor of the cottage being a system of belief or truth, a belief similar to a physical structure, if held onto or given attention, will maintain its perceived truth or integrity or structural integrity and life, like the cottage. Perceived because we find what we look for in terms of the truths we hold on to. We next read, cling to it long enough, and not a doubt it will turn true again, for so it goes. Most of the change we think we see in life is due to the truths being in and out of favor. At the start, we come across the verb cling. The word connotes ideas of desperation, emergency, and a sense of need, emotions and ideas that could also arise from clinging on to ideas and the sense of meaning that they give to people. and the desperation that can often be experienced from clinging on to such things. Later we read, most of the change we think we see in life, and the verb think again hints at the idea that due to our individuality, we see and take different things from possibly the same thing. So we look at the same thing, but based on our individual lives, we take different things out of it. Oftentimes, we see what we look for, again, based on what we are looking for and the experiences that have shaped the things we look for. Most of the change we think we see in life is due to truths being in and out of favor. Words like in and out, and as later we'll come across, back and back, present a dynamic of change that occurs in life, that is life, the dynamic of life, that it continues and is forever changing and is forever in movement. It presents the inevitability of change, and inability to stop time and to stop change from occurring. And this change oftentimes comes from different generations, similar to the grandma's generation and the narrator's generation at the time, or even the kids' generations, seeking, although the similar truths, similar things such as meaning and happiness, they reach these truths through different means and through different paths, through different ways of looking through the same lens. So desert it would have to be, so walled by mountain ranges half in summer snow. No one would covet or think it worth the pains of conquering to force change. The word walled at the end is a part of his dreamt of utopia. This utopia is surrounded by walls, and this is so that the truths that his utopian society holds on to are maintained, and these walls or mountains act as barriers to resist change from outside and to resist outside influence. This highlights again the inevitability of change and it being a part of life, and by clinging on to what is and not allowing change to occur in life, we are being foolish. No is an oxymoronic phrase, possibly highlighting the impossibility of his dreamed of utopia, and again highlighting that truths will always be blurred because of individual people's perspectives and lives and how they choose to see things, and also because of time and its infiniteness. No one would covet it or think it worth the pains of conquering to force change on. Scattered oasis where men dwelt, but mostly sand dunes held loosely in tamarisk, blown over and over themselves in idleness. In this section, the word sand could be a metaphor or representation of time and forever flowing, and with it creating change and bringing about change, and our inability to stop this from happening, and forcing us to allow it to be, and to allow change to be a part of life, and to allow time to change truths in perception, but rather at the end of the day we see that, and like the line below it, blown over and over themselves in idleness. This presents the idea that generational ideologies that come and go with time, with their truths and patterns of lives, are all possibly or are seeking the same things just through different ways, and always coming back to the same simple underlying truths. Retard mid-waist, my cowering caravans. There are bees in this wall. He struck the clapboards. Fierce heads looked out. Small bodies pivoted. We rose to go. Sunset blazed on the windows. The dash next to caravans ends his stream of consciousness, or his stream of thought, and his dream of the utopia. And we come to learn in the next line that it is the bees that stop this, that cut off his dream. His dream is distracted by reality, or bees, or fear and danger. In other words, the infinite dynamics of nature and its always movingness do not allow us to live the utopia that this man was dreaming of. To finish it off, we read, "Sunset blazed on the windows." The word sunset is an extreme contrast to the rainy and darker colors and the mystery of the beginning of the poem. The contrasts the vagueness also, and shows that their experience and spending time with the truth, sitting by the cottage and playing around with the truth, has proved to possibly be a cathartic experience and clarifying their minds and their thoughts. And this has all been achieved through them spending time with the truth and ideas of truth and dwelling in it.